Here it is, and it happened in chapter 1.
You're in Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis chapter 1:26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish and the sea." God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created. God blessed them. God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." Now, that.
And he finishes by saying, "And the fifth day," he goes on down here and he says.
So anyway, you gotta again read it clearly. But anyway,
oh yeah, the sixth day. I'm sorry, it was the sixth day. Because he ends up and says, "God saw what he made, behold, it was very good, and it was evening and morning, and the sixth day."
Yeah, he created the creatures of the earth on the fifth. So
no question about that one. Okay, did we have another call? Reverend Richard, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Now, when Reverend Richard comes on, Reverend Richard, I always like to tell people that you're
fine.
coming from a different reverend, a different pastoring viewpoint than we believe in. You're into that. We're all Christ-conscious ability. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I know you guys want to get into the film, so I want to ask you just a real quick question about some of the materials I'm finding in the bookstore these days that I don't know if you're familiar with them or if you've read any of them, but one of them is called American Fascists, and it's all about the Christian right and how they're taking America down the bad road and all that stuff. Another one is called A Letter to a Christian Nation. And both of them, and these are only two of, I don't know, half a dozen books that are out right now, people lambasting the Christian right. Also, there is a gentleman on public access television, and I think there's a local church in town. His name is Pastor Gino Jennings. Have you heard of him?
You talked about him one day.
Yeah, I mentioned him. Well, I was listening to him the other night.
Did you know that one of the people from his congregation called in and offered you the opportunity to come down and visit and speak in their church if you want to? And
oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I wasn't hearing that. But he said the other night, and I can't quote it directly, but he was speaking in terms of most other ministries, because he has a tendency, if he doesn't believe this, he says it anyway, that what he's teaching is closer to the truth than just about every other evangelical ministry on the planet.
Yeah, that's what you said before.
Right.
And hey, that he has every right to believe
sure
that
he does.
he wants.
But what I don't understand is, and this was something, even when I was still an evangelical
Make
Christian,
it quick, Richard.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to finish up here. What I don't understand is how there can be so much division within the evangelical Christian movement today.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay?
Now, of course, Richard, when he calls, is always trying to, to put doubt into people's mind about Christianity that's the Orthodox Christianity, because he believes in a Christ consciousness, Eastern religion. I was into Eastern religion before, and we won't get into all that, but his first point was being, the Christian right. Yeah, the press lumps all Christians into the Christian right, evangelical and otherwise. And there are a group that are way out there, and there's all types of Christians. There are some that really do want to take over the country for Christ. But Jesus talked about render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. And he said, my kingdom's not of this earth, or I'd fight for my kingdom now against the Romans. And so he separated that. There are other Christians who view it that way. They have every entitlement to view things the way they do. I think they're in error. And as far as this fellow who's got another ministry, he's entitled to believe whatever he wants. There's a lot of good churches out there, and there's a lot of bad churches out there, right, Jay?
Yep, the devil's done a masterful job from day one when he deceived Adam and Eve.
Do we have another call?
In creating division.
On the line there?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
We do want the viewers to see the rest of this clip because it really exposes the deception.
Yeah, but they're running out of time is what they're saying. Why don't we run it and I'll tell you when to cut it. So run that section.
That the people referred to by the Book of Mormon may have stayed in Central America.
The traditional view that I grew up with of the Book of Mormon is that it was a story of the people, and I think it's fair to say all the people, of the American continent. As I look at the data from science, the data on the DNA evidence, looking at the origins of populations, what I see is a different story. I see the story of a group of people who came apparently to the Americas, but may have occupied a very small stage.
One response among Mormons wrestling with genetic data is that the founding populations of the Book of Mormon would have been small and would have made a small genetic contribution to the larger populations that were already here. Okay. This response rests on a rejection of statements from the Book of Mormon. It also requires a rejection of the teachings of Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and virtually every other church president who has commented on the subject. It requires setting aside statements in the Doctrine and Covenants, another Mormon scripture, about Lamanites being the indigenous people near present-day Missouri. This approach is kind of like trying to defend the prophetic status of Joseph Smith by denying his prophecies. Another scripture that has to be set aside is a statement in the Pearl of Great Price in Joseph Smith's history, in which he has Moroni telling him that the gold plates contain a history of the people on this continent. This continent would presumably mean North America, because this event took place in New York.
So clearly here you have Joseph Smith stating in Scripture that the Book of Mormon record is about the former inhabitants of this continent. Not a little corner of the Americas, but about the continent. And it's for this reason that Latter-day Saints believe that the Book of Mormon talks about all of the inhabitants of the American continent.
The Book of Mormon is not saved by a small, limited geography, because even that group, even if that sort of thing happened, then that is not as what is described in the Book of Mormon, and we have to say the Book of Mormon is wrong. Not only that, there still ought to be some traces of even a small population in the gene pool in that local region.
The DNA research on Native Americans from Central America is equally devastating for the claims of the Book of Mormon than the rest of the continents.
Stephen L. Whittington, for example, is one of the leading experts on the genetics of the peoples of Central America, the place where Mormon scholars believe the Book of Mormon occurred.
Most of my research has taken place in the Maya area. I personally have never seen any evidence of Hebrew origins for Native Americans.
If Hebrew immigrants populated the Americas, there would also be a strong Hebrew influence found in the languages and archaeology of the New World.
All the evidence we have, and we have evidence from probably in the neighborhood of 800 to 900 different languages that are or have been spoken on this continent within the last few centuries, points against it. None of those languages that we have has ever shown any indications of having descended from Hebrew.
With the Book of Mormon, we don't have a single, not one source from ancient America outside of the Book of Mormon validating a single place, a single person, a single event in both the Book of Mormon and external evidence from ancient America. We don't have any of that. So the problems that DNA poses for the Book of Mormon, in a sense, exemplify the difficulties that we already have in archaeology. There's never been any evidence that would show us that there was an Israelite migration to the New World, not in genetics or, for that matter, in any other source, historical, archaeological, or